shift left, security, testing, compliance, and your other bottlenecks. It's time to get rid of them. Get rid of those bottlenecks and move from bolted on security to baked in. That's shift left. Let's take a look. So let's be clear, shift left does not just apply to cybersecurity, but it applies to any traditional final processes such as testing, compliance, and even hardware-in-the-loop testing. Too often you're going to see bottlenecks at the end of a CI/CD pipeline as a manual step or as something that really is done by a different team that's often not part of your DevSecOps environment and team, and you end up really seeing drastic and much slower pace when it comes to the ability to get all the way to production. And so you want to make sure that your teams that are involved in those usually final steps are shifted left, so they are part and embedded of that DevSecOps pipeline process to now become part of the daily or weekly process, so that it does not become a massive problem and bottleneck down the road. And if you've not watched our video on CI/CD pipeline and GitOps, you need to do that first. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right background to understand this subject. So as we've seen before in the CI/CD pipeline, you cannot optimize your process if you don't focus on solving your bottlenecks. To do that, you need to shift left all these late stage manual things to being more and more automated and really embrace ruthless automation to get this done and educate those teams, whether it's cyber teams, testing teams, compliance teams, hardware-in-the-loop testing teams, OTD, like we call it in DoD, to shift to the left, to be part of that DevSecOps pipeline process. Ideally, those teams will help you create automated tests and streamline the ability to push your software to your staging environment, to your lab, to your production environment, all the way to your end users, so you can get faster feedback loop between your development teams and your end users, so you can see what sticks, what to focus on, and what works. So the real definition of ruthless automation is to automate pretty much anything that you're thinking about whether or not you should actually decide to automate it or not. If you're thinking about automation and you're wondering if you should, then the answer is yes, you must. That's it. It's that simple. So first, let's take a look at shifting cybersecurity left. Cyber experts must have the proper training to understand and adapt to what GitOps and DevSecOps is and their principles. You can't just, hope for the best or give them access to this training, because they're going to need to really understand what it's going to take for them to reinvent themselves to become part of that equation, so they have a chance at contributing value to your automation and your security and your actual ability to release to production faster. Now, when it comes to cyber teams, of course, they need to understand that the source of truth of your desired state is in Git. So no more logging into SSH on Linux and typing manual commands, drifting the desired state from the current state in production. That's not acceptable anymore. So they need to understand that now they're going to need to make code changes in Git to make any kind of change. No more Linux administrator just connecting in production, making a manual change. That's all gone. They also need to understand that there will be no human in production making changes. Again, all those changes will happen in Git, in the source code repo, so they kind of have to become lightweight developers to be able to make the right configuration changes or YAML or Docker file changes to adapt the ability to update dependencies or patch things on a code basis, not anymore in runtime by typing commands. Now, of course, so many cyber tools are focused on making changes in production. That's not acceptable anymore. No runtime cyber tool can bypass Git and drift the desired state in Git from your runtime state. So now all these cyber tools needs to be changed, and you need to reach out to all your cyber product companies to tell them, hey, no more, clicking on the button in that my cyber tool that will now change what's running in production. What they need to do now is create a merge request or a pull request in your Git repo to start triggering the change acceptance through change management, multiple set of eyes approval. And so the cyber tools now will be able to simply automate the creation of the code change in Git so that you can approve it with 2 set of eyes, 3 set of eyes based on the criticality of the change, and now avoid any drift between instantiations as well. Now that they understand that their cyber tools will not be making changes in production, but instead in Git, they need to understand that cyber findings must be continuously reviewed and remediated in Git as well. And you're going to move from maybe once a year pen testing schedule to continuously red teaming and pen testing your stack. That's a whole different mindset. Platform One is a whole team dedicated in red teaming and pen testing the entire DevSecOps stack and the Platform One work. That's never ending. It's continuous. That's the only way really to be able to move at the pace of relevance. So you're trading off these bottlenecks, but you're also augmenting and improving those kind of red teaming capabilities so that you can mitigate the risk of that accelerated pace compared to your cyber posture current risk as well. So then, of course, you need to make sure that your CI/CD pipeline, and check out the CI/CD video segment on CI/CD gates, have the right thresholds, right? Because your cyber teams need to agree that those thresholds are right based on the risk of this service and the data it's housing. So again, you need to make sure the thresholds are decided in conjunction with your cyber teams and reasonable to be able to get it done and go to production. But at the same time, it has to meet the risk level as well. So it's a discussion between your CISO, your CIO team, your development team, and your cyber experts to really set the threshold at the right level and ideally increase, right, that threshold over time by gaining maturity and getting better and stronger over time. Of course, they also need to make sure that your dependencies and your overall open source libraries are updated and don't become stale and don't accrue technical or cyber debt. So now let's take a look at shifting your testing left. So testing team also needs to get the proper training as well. It's the same concept that your cyber teams. They need to understand and embrace the GitOps principle. They need to understand that a lot of the manual testing they used to do needs to be automated by using a test suite. And they need to be able to do that and help you maybe through pair programming, create the right kind of tests for your unit testing, integration testing, end-to-end testing, and regression testing. So again, source of truth is in Git. Your desired state is in Git, no drift, no manual testing. It must be replicable, it must be automated. The test will be code in Git all the way to end-to-end testing. Your test coverage percentage will be crucial to determine your testing maturity, and you need to make sure that they embrace concept like test-driven development, where you create a test before you even create the code of a new feature. So you already have the test and you're already making sure that the new code is going to be passing the test of that new feature you're building. So all these concepts are essential to your testing maturity. And of course, if a production application fails, it must be mandated that the first thing you do, during your postmortem is to make sure that you create the tests to make sure that the issue does not happen again. So that's effectively part of your test coverage, and increasing that maturity of testing. Now, test teams ideally must be embedded inside of your development teams, like I said, maybe through pair programming, to be able to devoting development life cycles to create integration testing and end-to-end testing. Too many times I see teams focusing on unit testing and forgetting that microservices work together to create the final system. And so you must have integration tests and end-to-end testing to make sure that the entirety of the system is behaving the way it should, particularly, if you're using chaos engineering to proactively kill services to see how your system behaves in case of something going wrong, which you should really do, when you're starting to increase your DevSecOps maturity as well. So think about how to have these development cycles where test engineers and developers can work together to create these additional tests so the team is able to test the entirety of your system. So now let's take a look at how to shift your compliance team, often seen as one of the biggest bottlenecks in modern history. So same concept, right? Compliance teams need to get the proper training to understand GitOps and DevSecOps. They need to get the understanding that the source of truth is in Git, that there needs to be no drift, and that ideally all your cyber controls and their implementation and remediation must be documented inside of a Git repo as code, using solutions like, RegOps and Security Compass as the element product to automate first the selection of the right cyber controls based on the risk and the system that you're managing, and of course the data that is protecting as well. And then of course you want to map that to open standards like Open Security Controls Assessment Language, OSCAL from NIST, that lets you document as code all your cyber controls, the implementation, the profiles, and even the assessments, so you have a real true picture of what controls you're supposed to be meeting, what controls are implemented, what controls have mitigations in place but not fully implemented right yet. And so you can have a real picture of your current state and where you're standing when it comes to meeting all these different cyber controls. And of course, they can be mapped through all these compliance requirements, whether you're using NIST 800-53 controls, or you're using ISO standards, or maybe FedRAMP, or maybe PII or PHI requirements. Ideally, you want to integrate all these tools, all these RegOps and compliance tools, of course, with your planning stack and your collaboration stack, so you can create tickets for controls that are not fully met, and you can have a good understanding of your automation and what's missing yet when it comes to meeting all these specific controls, and maybe have open tickets until you're actually meeting those requirements. There you have it. You shifted your testing, cybersecurity, and compliance to automate the generation of your NIST or the compliance documents to demonstrate not only that you're secure thanks to your baked-in security, but that you're compliant as well. Because keep in mind, you can be compliant but not secure. So now you have the proof in code that you're meeting your compliance requirements, that you're secure, you have a live dashboard, and you have your testing to demonstrate that your code is running the way it should. Now you have the maturity to fail faster and accelerate your deployments in production from maybe once every few months to now multiple times a day. And don't forget, if you're wondering whether or not you should automate something, if you ask yourself that question, that's good enough to say yes, ruthless automation.